We're here looking out on a familiar vista, a vista of Los Angeles, because the city of Beverly Hills has been rocked by a drama at once riveting and chilling. It was nearly a year ago that one of this town's most ambitious, charming, promising new executives and his wife were savagely murdered in their home, a murder so strange everyone searched the dark byways of movie fiction for explanations, until the prosecutor said that he had the darkest explanation of all, and he charged the two sons with the crime. Tonight, we are going to bring you a two-part report on that murder in Beverly Hills, a story and an investigation that is filled with all the contradictions of human nature, a story that evokes the irresistible themes of a Hollywood plot. There are questions everywhere as this strange story winds around and around and ends up in a cemetery where Kitty and her husband José Menendez lie buried with a secret. We begin in Beverly Hills, where the grass is greener than life, and even the people seek a kind of technicolor perfection. In fact, if you're still inclined to believe that money buys happiness, these should be the happiest 5.5 square miles on Earth. When the sun set here in Beverly Hills on August 20th, 1989, it was quiet outside this house at 722 Elm Drive, a medium-price house at about $5 million. Elton John lived here once. So did some rich Saudis. The current owners were sitting in the study watching TV. Kitty Menendez, a homemaker, and José Menendez, an executive, a rising star in the entertainment business. They had two sons, Lyle, 21, Erik, age 18. This Sunday night at 10 p.m., Kitty and José were sitting in sweatshirts, watching television, eating strawberries and ice cream, when someone walked in and blasted them with shotguns.
If you've ever seen somebody who's been shot with a shotgun at close range, you know the terrible damage that does to a person.
At close range?
At close range.
L.A. County District Attorney Ira Reiner is the prosecutor. His coroner's report lists the numbing details. José Menendez was shot 5 times, a fatal wound through the back of the head into the brain. His wife, Kitty, was unrecognizable. 4 separate shots in the head and face, 6 in her arms, chest, hips, legs. Back on Elm Drive, neighbors said at 10 p.m. they heard sounds like firecrackers, but then silence, until an hour and a half later, when this neighbor, who asked not to be identified, said she heard the shrieks of a boy curled up on the Menendez lawn. It was 18-year-old Erik.
I could see that someone was kind of in a little ball, screaming and crying, and just horrible, horrible sounds, truthfully.
At 11:47 p.m., a frantic call came into 911.
It was a hysterical male reporting that there'd been a shooting at his residence.
That call came from the Menendez boys, who were a portrait of grief as they told police they had been out for the evening, had come home, and found their bloodied parents. Erik told a freelance journalist what he saw that night.
I've never seen anything like it. Never will see anything like it. Probably the hardest thing I'll probably ever have to do. They weren't real. They didn't look real. They wax. They look like wax. It's something that I've never seen my dad helpless. I think that possibly if Lyle and I would have been home, if we would have been able to do something about it, maybe my dad would be alive. I definitely would give my life for my dad's.
We have alleged that they murdered both of them, and they murdered them with shotguns.
Yet everyone on the outside says the boys worshipped their parents. José Menendez had come to the U.S. at the age of 16, the penniless son of a proud Cuban family of doctors and champion athletes. He was 19 when he married an all-American girl from Illinois named Kitty Anderson. They were passionate about their sons. Kitty's notes in the photo album are full of tender detail. Even as a child, little Erik was more like her, less assertive, more sensitive. His older brother Lyle had the quick tongue and brash ambition of his father. By the 1970s, José's ambition had paid off. The immigrant who started out washing dishes had become a top executive, first at Hertz, then at RCA Records, where he signed groups like the Eurythmics. He bought a serene estate in Princeton, New Jersey, where Lyle would eventually get into the university. José kept the pressure on the boys to make it big, in school, on the court. But José's cousin, Henry Yanio, says it was just his way of being a good father.
He would call during the day, 2, 3, 4 times a day, a busy executive such as he was, to check up, to make sure that they had gone to practice, to make sure that they had followed up on their studies, to see how they had done on their examinations.
Their father was also generous. There was plenty of money for clothes and cars. And when José took a new job in California, there was enough money to start building the family dream house in Calabasas outside LA. 13 acres, a panoramic view, a tennis court you could see from the bathtub. But something happened. The family never moved in. They abruptly left for Beverly Hills and the house on Elm Drive, where 1 year later, Kitty and José were murdered. José's mother, Maria, is still haunted by their last moments. Kitty seems to see the murderers, tries to flee. José never has a chance.
José is supposed to sleepy, and Kitty, no Kitty. Kitty up and lay down close to him. Especially Kitty knows.
8 days after the murder, there was a memorial service at the Princeton University Chapel. The most poignant moment was when Lyle read a letter from his father. It said, "I believe that both you and Erik can make a difference. I believe that you will. I encourage you not to select the easy road. I urge you to walk with honor regardless of the consequences, and to challenge yourself to excellence." Brendan Scott was the priest at the service.
When Lyle finished what he had to say and came down from the pulpit, and when he went back to the pew where he and Erik were sitting, Erik got up and embraced him.
Erik, who had suffered so much the night of the murder. Erik was out on the lawn weeping, in agony.
That's your characterization of it, not mine.
Before long, police were becoming suspicious of the Menendez sons.
We have alleged that the reason behind this was financial gain.
Erik abandoned his plans to go to UCLA, hiring a $60,000 a year tennis coach and saying he was training to be a pro. Lyle returned to the Princeton area and began a kind of spending frenzy. His friends say they thought it was his way of dealing with his grief. Over several weeks, he bought clothes, a Rolex, a $62,000 Porsche. Rather than return to school, he bought a restaurant, saying his mother would have been pleased. Friends say it was a strange, swaggering imitation of his businessman father. And for a while, Lyle hired these bodyguards, saying he feared for his own life because his father had a lot of business enemies. That business was a video distribution company called Live Entertainment. José was also on the board of its parent company, Carolco, which is most famous for making the Rambo films.
The press started speculating that maybe this was a mafia hit.
John Mason, an entertainment attorney from Lake Tahoe, Nevada, is also on the board of José's company and was his friend. He says the company is clean, but
there were a lot of rumors and innuendos to the effect that the company might have been doing business with people in the mafia.
At one point, Carolco bought a record chain from Morris Levy, a man tied to the mob and convicted of conspiracy to extort. And Menendez had tangled with another man whose company was bought out by Carolco, a former pornography distributor, a man the California Attorney General in 1986 alleged had mob connections, Noel Bloom. Did you kill José Menendez?
No, I definitely did not. It's even funny.
Noah Bloom says that doesn't mean he liked Menendez, whom he described as a vicious, ruthless businessman.
He would bring people in to go through the desk drawers of people in the company at night.
You know this?
Oh, for a fact.
Do you know what Erik said when Erik was asked about who murdered his father?
Yes.
In an interview, Erik Menendez suggested that Noah Bloom might have had a motive.
My dad had embarrassed him so badly.
Such a nice boy.
Noah Bloom a suspect?
No.
But as we know from reading the newspapers, in this industry, there are a lot of fingerprints of the mob on the entertainment business.
Diane, this is not television. This is not movies. This is real life. The fact of the matter is, this is not an organized crime killing at all. And that was rejected very early on when the investigation took it in an entirely different direction.
That direction became clear 6 months after the murders, when Glenn Stevens was riding with Lyle, his friend.
We pull out of the house in Beverly Hills. We're driving about a block and a half up the road, and there's a blue Ford Taurus in the way with a red light flashing, and there's a guy running with, I think, a bulletproof vest and a double-barrel shotgun in front of the car. Lyle puts the Jeep in reverse and starts to back up slowly, and we hit something. And the next thing I know, I turn around, and it's a van, and 2 or 3 policemen come out with, police windbreakers on and everything, and they pull guns, and they just surround the Jeep, and they pulled us out one by one, put us face first on the pavement, and handcuffed us. And then they dragged me away into one of the police vehicles and said, "Do you know what this is all about?" And I said, "No, I'm sorry. I have an idea," because it started to click just then, after thinking about it for 15 minutes, what they could come out in such force about. And they said, "Well, Lyle's being arrested for the murder of his parents."
Within days, Erik voluntarily turned himself in. He and Lyle were now both in police custody. Their grandmother is insistent that they are innocent, and their friends say it simply cannot be true.
Charging the kids is the most outrageous thing ever.
They both were given enough money to live very good lives. They had great clothes, they had cars. You couldn't ask for more. I don't see any reason.
I have never seen any predisposition to violence in Lyle, and I don't think he was capable of thrusting the barrel of a shotgun into his father's mouth and blowing off the back of his head. And the same with Erik. Adored his mother. Adored his mother.
Whenever you find people who murder for financial gain, invariably there's also some hatred that underlies that.
This boy killing father and mother? No, no, and no.
On March 26th of this year, Erik and Lyle Menendez were each arraigned on 2 counts of murder.
Both charges carry special circumstances for which you could be sentenced to death. Erik Galen Menendez, how do you plead?
I'm guilty, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Joseph Lyle Menendez, to the charges in the amended complaint, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
Tonight, Lyle and Erik Menendez are spending their 3rd month in jail on charges of murdering their parents with multiple blasts from 2 shotguns. Outside the prison, the prosecution and the defense have already begun the tangled trench warfare over what evidence will be permitted in court. In particular, audio tapes, which could be the explosive center of a trial. As we said before, the defense lawyers and the 2 boys would not speak with us. You should also know that every person close to this story felt reluctant to speak because of the judge's decision to seal most of the case so far. The report you're about to see is the result of our search for key people and clues, like the witness who may have given police their breakthrough, and information on the purchase of the murder weapons. We talked to dozens of people all over the country, asking them to tell us more about the life and death of José and Kitty Menendez. We begin again with the family on Elm Drive in Beverly Hills. A family that, like all others, had stresses and secrets. Only some of theirs have begun to emerge. Remember the abrupt departure from Calabasas? Primetime has learned that just 1 year before the murders, Erik Menendez had been in trouble there. He burglarized this house, the home of Michael and Dina Ginsburg, and stole their entire safe. Then, a couple of weeks later, he broke into the home of John and Susan List, the parents of one of his tennis teammates. The police report shows $2,400 was taken and $100,000 worth of jewelry. Several sources believe that Lyle was also involved and even planned the burglaries. But since Erik was a minor, he took the rap alone because his punishment would be less severe. In the end, most of the stolen property was returned. Erik's sentence was probation and counseling, which eventually led him to this man, psychologist Jerome Oziel, a man you will meet again. José Menendez, a source says, paid out $11,000 to cover any damage. Within just 2 months, the Menendez family moved to Beverly Hills. Erik was forbidden any further contact with some of his Calabasas friends like Craig Signorelli, who sources say had been a police informant against Erik. As best friends, the two boys shared an adolescent fantasy of their supremacy. Signorelli's nickname was King, Erik's was Shepherd. Others were the sheep. Years ago, they even wrote a sophomoric screenplay together about a perfect crime. It begins with the son murdering his wealthy parents. Nor did the Menendez trouble stop in Calabasas. Lyle was suspended from Princeton for cheating on a paper. José immediately flew back to try to get him reinstated. So Lyle and Erik were not exactly model kids. Still, those kinds of family problems are hardly evidence of a desire or motive for murder. But what about the motive given by the prosecution? Financial gain. The wills left by José and Kitty bequeathed their $14 million estate to the boys, though it'll be more like $4 million after debts and taxes are paid. But sources say, within 2 weeks of the murder, Lyle flew home from the East Coast and consulted this computer expert. His name is Howard Witkin. Lyle reportedly wanted to erase some entries in his father's computer, saying he didn't want people to know his father's private business affairs. But even family members say one of the things erased may have been the draft of a new will.
The will was very much involved in our investigation, and I don't think it'd be appropriate to comment too specifically on that either.
Though José's cousin, Henry Yanio, says that's no reason to distrust Lyle.
Certainly some file called a will that has electronic information that can be retrieved and printed would not be valid as a will in the state of California or any other place that I know. So I think that this is just another little straw that the Beverly Hills Police is grabbing at.
Family members go on to say privately that if you're really looking for a money motive, there are other people who had just as much to gain from the deaths. The company José Menendez worked for took out an insurance plan on him, a $15 million insurance policy, which paid off and indeed gave them one of the best quarters they'd ever had in the business.
Diane, this is not a game. This is real life. You don't look around for all those kind of things and then try to make up theories. The fact of the matter is there is evidence that is uncovered in the course of an investigation that will lead you in one direction and one direction only.
Friends of the boys will say, look, they stood to inherit a lot more money if their father were alive and continuing to make money, that he was just reaching his peak earning years. It doesn't make sense they would do this for money.
People kill for money, but they mostly kill for hatred.
But how could parents create that kind of hatred in these boys?
I have no idea. Who can understand that? I don't.
When you seek the answer to that question from people close to this case, you hear just about everything. You hear that the boys were cold-blooded killers who were simply tired of their father's control and didn't want their mother as a witness. You hear from others that, yes, they did it, but out of anguish and love because of their parents' marital troubles. And you hear that Lyle forced his younger brother Erik to join in. And you hear from still others that the boys are completely innocent, the victims of circumstantial evidence. If anyone knows the real answer, it may be this man, the psychologist you met before, Dr. Jerome Oziel. Sources say Oziel counseled the boys after the murder, and with their consent, tape recorded some conversations. These tapes were seized by an agent of the court.
Well, the whole concept of a search warrant and having 7 police officers in your home is rather awesome for anybody.
We haven't heard the tapes. The court has them under seal. But we have heard from several sources that what's on them will clearly indicate that the sons did kill their parents, if the tapes are ever admitted in court. The defense is determinedly trying to keep them out. The district attorney is determinedly trying to get them admitted as evidence. Oziel will not talk about the tapes or the Menendez case, but he did discuss the general theory of doctor-patient confidentiality in very tough situations.
A therapist is like a priest or minister in the sense that people come in and confess, except they look also not only for a person to whom to confess, but for someone to help them work through and resolve their problems. So I and any therapist carries with him or with her at all times hundreds or thousands of people's secrets, and it's a sacred obligation to preserve those secrets unless the law mandates that one does otherwise.
This case is not going to involve any new law. It doesn't break any new ground. There isn't any question whatsoever as a matter of law that the privilege does not necessarily apply, or does not apply at all when there has been a threat to the safety and danger to another.
We have been told that one of the boys did make threats, and that there may still be another crack in the sanctity of the privilege. Under California law, if the therapist tells a third party the content of the tapes, yes, does that also release the privilege?
That's correct.
Primetime has learned that this third party was privy to the substance of Oziel's discussions with Erik and Lyle. At the time, she was Oziel's girlfriend. Her name is Judalyn Smith. Her decision to contact the police gave them the big break that led to the arrest. We tracked her down to question her about her involvement in the case. She refused to be interviewed.
At this time, I'm not at liberty to discuss anything concerning the case.
And there will be other prosecution witnesses. Remember Craig Signorelli? Sources say Signorelli has told police Erik revealed to him involvement in the murder. Though another high school friend, Andy Pierce, says this about Signorelli.
His credibility is nil, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't think anything he says on the witness stand should have any effect on the case. That's my opinion, I'll testify to that.
For every friend who has helped build the case against the boys, there are just as many who stand by them. Their 2 girlfriends always show up in court and visit them every day in jail. But now there's another person and another clue that sources say might link the brothers to the murder weapons. This is the person, Donovan Goodrow. Here's what we've been told. That 2 12-gauge Mossberg shotguns were purchased at this sporting goods store in San Diego, California, on August 18th, 2 days before the murder. For that purchase, the store was given the California driver's license of Donovan Goodrow. But on that date, Goodrow punched a time clock, showing that he was at work in New York City. He told police his driver's license was missing, possibly stolen. He also said that he used to be a roommate of Lyle Menendez. Goodrow is not a suspect. The prosecutor went to court asking that Lyle and Erik produce handwriting samples. Sources say for comparison with the signature on the form you must file when you buy a firearm. The murder weapons have still not been found. Which brings us again to the night of August 20th. The boys have their own story. They say they left home, went to a movie at this theater, and then to a food tasting festival here. They said they called a friend to meet them at this restaurant, but instead came back and found their parents dead. Lyle and Erik will have their day in court, but for now, the boys who once lived in a mansion in Beverly Hills live in maximum security in these cells in Los Angeles County Jail.
Every time they leave their cell, they are chained and manacled. They have their hands handcuffed, they have chains on their feet, When you talk to them, they're chained to the chair across from you. This is the kind of life that they lead while this legal process now goes on for years and years and years.
And as long as it takes, their grandmother Maria will keep her vigil in the house on Elm Drive, loving her grandchildren as passionately as she mourns her son.
I am here if they need. I defend my children with teeth and hand. Don't care the body no knows them. I knows my children.
I still believe that the constitutional guarantee of a presumption of innocence ought to be observed by everybody, by the public and by the press, by the prosecutors and by the judicial system.
3,000 miles away, in a graveyard in Princeton, New Jersey, far from the courtrooms, the clamoring journalists, the controversy, something has been overlooked. No one ever bought a tombstone for the graves of Kitty and José Menendez. As currently scheduled, the first important hearing will be on the admissibility of the tapes, and it will be held on May 22nd. That issue alone could go on for a long time.